Insurance isn't a one-size-fits-all, and shopping for it shouldn't feel like squeezing into something that just doesn't fit. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they show you options that fit your budget. Enough hunting for discounts, trying to calculate rates, and tinkering with coverages. Maybe you're picking out your very first policy. Or maybe you're just looking for something that works better for you and your family. Either way, they make it simple for you to see your options. No guesswork, no surprises. Ready to see how easy and fun shopping for car insurance can be? Visit Progressive.com and give the Name Your Price tool a try. Take the stress out of shopping and find coverage that fits your life on your terms. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
And away we go, episode 1320 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Thursday, May 7th, 2026, and we say rest in peace, Ted Turner. He died on Wednesday. He was 87. The impact of Ted Turner on sports and media, just massive. Ted Turner's life included the following: owning MLB's Atlanta Braves, owning the NBA's Atlanta Hawks, owning World Championship Wrestling, creating the Goodwill Games, serving as skipper of the yacht Courageous as he defended the America's Cup in 1977 by beating Australia 4-0, and starting the cable television stations TBS, TNT, and CNN. One of the most interesting things about TBS to me was what has been called Turner time. TBS started shows at 5:35 past the hour, in part because, and this is great, in the era of TV Guide and printed TV listings, starting at 5:35 past the hour allowed TBS programs to receive their own separate line in TV Guide and printed TV listings, standing out from the shows that started at the usual times of the top of an hour and 30 past the hour. Turner time. For instance, WCW used to air on TBS every Saturday evening at 6:05. Not 6 o'clock. I could talk about Ted Turner's impact on pro wrestling for hours, but Ted Turner was an outside-the-box thinker. Rest in peace, Ted Turner. Hello and welcome to this Thursday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. Just how damaged were the Washington Commanders by injury in going 5-12 in the NFL's 2025 regular season? To what extent was our team done dirty by bad injury luck last regular season? I've been wanting to do a deep dive on this, and next segment we'll do that deep dive as I'll speak with Alex Vigderman, Vice President of Analytics for Sports Info Solutions. Alex has conducted a study on which NFL teams were most and least affected by injuries in the 2025 regular season. He has calculated each team's value lost to injury in the 2025 regular season. Spoiler alert, Washington was brutalized by injury this past regular season. We'll discuss the findings of his research and what they mean for Washington. We'll explore the realities of injuries in the NFL. We'll examine Washington for the 2025 regular season having the highest average snap weighted age in the NFL in terms of offensive and defensive snaps, and we'll get Alex's breakdown of quarterback Jayden Daniels. Alex Vigderman, Vice President of Analytics for Sports Info Solutions, a big-time company. Next segment on just how damaged Washington was by injury this past regular season and more. And also on the show, I'll talk Washington Nationals and Baltimore Orioles. The Nats, they snapped a 4-game homerless drought by hitting for power in a major way, a 15-2 win over the Minnesota Twins at Nationals Park on Wednesday evening. The Nats totaled 14 hits and 5 walks. 10 of the hits were extra base hits, including 4 home runs. The O's, they now have won 2 consecutive games off a 5-game losing streak, a 7-4 win at the Miami Marlins on Wednesday evening. The O's totaled 7 runs, 7 hits, and 7 walks. 6 of the hits were extra base hits. The Nats and O's, each team in MLB's 2026 regular season, is 17-20. You can hit me up on on X at Al Galdi. You can email me, the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, give the podcast a 5-star rating. On the podcast, we'll read whatever you write in writing a review of the podcast. And what you write could be a sports take. You don't just have to write about the podcast. From Capitol Hill Electric on Apple Podcasts writes Capitol Hill Electric. Living in Denver can make it hard to follow my teams. Al keeps me in the know. Al, you need to do a deeper dive into Josh Harris's and Apollo Global's connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Thank you for that, Capitol Hill Electric. Well, I have talked about Josh Harris being mentioned in the Epstein files, and Harris, to his credit, immediately addressed being mentioned in the files. So the Justice Department on January 30th released the 3 million pages of documents from investigative files on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, this via the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Washington Commanders managing partner Josh Harris that evening came out with an explanation of him being in the files, said a spokesperson for Josh Harris on January 30th, quote, Josh Harris never had an independent relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Harris sought to prevent Epstein's attempts to develop a corporate relationship with Apollo. As these emails indicate, Harris sought to avoid meeting with Epstein, canceling meetings, and having others return his calls, end quote. So Josh Harris's correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein, according to Harris, was through assistants and was about Epstein wanting to arrange business meetings with Harris, who made his fortune in private equity, co-founded the firm Apollo Global Management in 1990. Jeffrey Epstein was filthy rich. He was very well connected. He had interactions with a lot of people, including a lot of other filthy rich people like Josh Harris. I am all for more information, and I am all for finding out the truth about the Epstein situation. I think that there's a lot about the Epstein situation that we don't know and or are not being told. But as best as we can tell, Josh Harris committed no wrongdoing, and the fact that he immediately addressed being in the files and that nobody has disputed his explanation for being in the files bring credibility to his explanation for being in the files. Email from Eric from Pennsylvania in response to an email that I read on last Thursday's show, episode 1315. The email was from our friend Neil Mullen on not being happy about Washington taking Rutgers quarterback Ethan Kaliak-Manis in the 7th round of the 2026 NFL draft, with the idea being that 7th round quarterbacks rarely amount to being quality quarterbacks. Wrote Neil, since 2000, exactly 3 quarterbacks taken in a 7th round have started as many as 5 games. For every Brock Purdy, there are dozens of abject failures. There is absolutely nothing that suggests that this Rutgers kid is going to take a snap in a real game for the team, and every reason to believe he won't. Okay, so that was Neil. Now this is Eric, writes Eric. The one guy was commenting on how late-round quarterbacks don't really get into games much. I have one name for that comment, Taylor Heinicke. You never know what could happen with a player. I mean, look at Kirk Cousins back in 2012. That is all. I'm glad your podcast is doing well, and I hope it keeps going that way for you. Listen to it every day. Take care, man. Well, thank you very much for that email, Eric. Former Washington quarterback Taylor Heinicke, a favorite of ours on this podcast. Our guy Tay-Tay. You know, he wasn't even a 7th round pick, right? He wasn't drafted at all. Taylor Heinicke entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent out of Old Dominion via signing with the Minnesota Vikings in May 2015. As I said in response to Neil's email, if Washington likes Ethan Kaliak-Manis and didn't want to risk another team taking him or having to bid on him as an undrafted free agent, then taking him in the 7th round made sense. Now, as is always the case, the evaluation better be right. If the team wasted a 7th round pick on a quarterback who can't play, that's not good, because every pick in a draft is meaningful. But it would be good for our team to have a long-term backup quarterback, either as a QB2 or QB3. And while Marcus Mariota is set to be the team's QB2 for a 3rd consecutive season, he's doing this on a series of 1-year contracts. One of these years may not re-sign, and while Washington, of course, could sign another veteran quarterback to be the QB2, having a younger guy who the team has been developing as QB2 would be nice. This was the idea with Sam Hartman, with him being on the team the last 2 seasons, but Hartman appears to have not worked out. We shall see about Ethan Kaliak-Manis, and long live our friend Taylor Heinicke. As edge defender Chase Young sang during his great 2020 rookie season with Washington, while mic'd up by NFL Films, Heinicke.
Let's get it there, Heinicke! Heinicke!
Exactly. Thank you, Chase. All right. Clothing from Quince is outstanding. Quince has all of your wardrobe staples for spring. Think 100% European linen shorts and shirts from just $34. Everything is priced at 50 to 80% less than what you'd find with similar brands. How? Well, Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. Everything is designed to last and make getting dressed easy. I have a Quince blue wool pullover. I love it. So comfortable. One of my favorite pieces of clothing from this past winter. Refresh your everyday with luxury that you'll actually use. Go to quince.com/Galdi for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/Galdi. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Galdi.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
Hey, please consider subscribing to the podcast if you're not already doing that. Subscribing to the podcast costs nothing. Make sure that you never miss an episode and helps out the podcast a lot. And if you're already subscribing, thank you. As we all know, the Washington Commanders, off enjoying great injury luck in the Renaissance 2024 season, experienced horrendous injury luck in their terrible 2025 season. But it's one thing for us to recognize the oh-so-bad injury luck for Washington this past season. What about quantifying the bad injury luck? Just how bad truly was Washington harmed by injury this past season? I'm very pleased to welcome to the Al Galdi podcast Alex Vigderman. He is the Vice President of Analytics for Sports Info Solutions. You can follow him on X at Vigman on campus. Alex for SportsInfoSolutions.com wrote a piece on which NFL teams were most and least affected by injuries in the 2025 regular season, in which Washington went 5-12. Washington had 222 games missed due to injury, far from the highest such total in the NFL. But Washington had 230 total points missed due to injury, the second highest such total in the NFL. So in terms of most value lost to injury in the 2025 regular season, Washington was number 2. The Arizona Cardinals were number 1. So Alex, Washington in the 2025 regular season via games missed was not as injury ravaged as we may think, but via most value lost to injury was as injury ravaged as we think. I wonder if you could speak to that and the methodology by which you determined points missed due to injury.
Yeah, so you're right to make that distinction, because games missed is pretty cut and dry. Did this guy play or not? The only thing that's a little bit nuanced there is that we remove like a backup quarterback who misses a game due to injury because he wasn't going to get on the field anyway. But in terms of total points missed, so we have a metric called total points that is our answer to total player value. So it uses the currency called expected points added, which is something that teams are using all over the sport, that just measures basically the value of plays, and it can sort of put things like turnovers and touchdowns and yards all into the same currency. And so we use that measure and assign a value to a player based on his contributions on the play. So that's using like, okay, the quarterback threw it this many yards and the receiver had this many yards after the catch, and we're sort of dividing the value of the play up that way and sort of bubbling that up into a total player value measure. So then we can take games missed and multiply it by total points and sort of like the sort of average performance of that player per game and say, okay, how many points did this team miss out on by virtue of this player being injured? We're not making distinctions like the backup for this player is really good or really bad or anything like that. Or schematically, not having Kyle Juszczyk on the 49ers would change their offense in such a way that his backup is not just the next fullback. They just wouldn't use a fullback. Any of that kind of stuff we're not messing around with. It's just like what is the value of this player per game and how many games did he miss? And in this case, the big X factor here, and it's true for all the teams that were sort of at the top of the list here, is did you lose your quarterback? And certainly the Commanders lost their quarterback, and that was a huge deal for them.
Yeah, and with that quarterback, Jayden Daniels, him playing in just 7 of Washington's 17 games last regular season due to getting injured 4 times. When you assess the value that Washington lost by Daniels missing so much time, was that value based on what he did in his all-time great 2024 rookie season or what he did in his 2025 season?
Yeah, so it is based on each player's most recent 17 games. So whenever that happened to be, one of the things we're actually looking to do in the offseason is kind of adjust that measure a little bit to make it a little bit more nuanced. Because, for example, somebody who plays relatively sparingly might not have their most recent 17 games be that recent. Or if you're talking about a rookie, guy plays a few games and gets hurt, how do you estimate the value of that player? So we're looking into adjusting that. But yeah, it's basically their most recent 17 NFL games. And the Jayden Daniels injury ended up being the second most impactful injury of any player in the NFL this year, with Kyler Murray being the most. And that's not necessarily because Kyler Murray is a better player per game than Jayden Daniels by our measure. It just, missed more time.
How many of Washington's 230 total points missed due to injury in the 2025 regular season were due to Jayden Daniels being out?
77. So a pretty big number. The Commanders definitely had more injuries around Daniels than, for example, like the Bengals around Joe Burrow and that sort of thing. Like I know when we looked at the Bengals, like if they didn't have the Joe Burrow injury, they would have been one of the most fortunate teams in the league. The Commanders still would have had a decent amount of injuries, but you would not have viewed them as unfortunate without the Daniels injuries.
Am I right in thinking that number 2 on Washington in total points missed due to injury in the 2025 regular season was receiver Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, he was definitely on the list. Actually, Austin Eckler, we like his. We tend to like some of the guys that are, they might be a little on the older side. James Conner also falls into this category. Guys who they're a little bit do-it-all guys, break some tackles, that sort of thing. So we tend to have pretty good values on those guys, and then a few guys on the defensive side as well.
The great question for an NFL team with an injury-ravaged season as Washington's 2025 season is how much of being hit hard by injury is a function of bad luck versus how much of being hit hard by injury is a function of controllable factors, i.e. a team's medical staff, a team's training staff, a team's practice habits, roster construction, etc. How would you answer that question?
There's definitely controllable factors. If you've listened to the discourse around football recently, you would definitely react to things like the 49ers practice facility getting some radiation and that sort of thing. And for what it's worth, the 49ers have one of the larger numbers of games missed over the last decade or so. And there's definitely some consistency there. If you use measures like sort of correlation coefficient, where it's 0 to 1 scale, where 1 is a perfect relationship and 0 is entire chaos, games missed has like a 1/3 relationship. So there's like a little bit of trend there at a team level in terms of predicting games missed. And so there's definitely something there in terms of the training staff, and the field surface is certainly a thing. We generally don't feel like it's the strongest factor in the world, the field surface, but it's definitely something that we've done research and have shown that certain turfs are more likely to produce some injuries. Not even necessarily just the soft contact stuff. It's also just like if it's a hard surface, you're going to get some contact with the ground type of injuries. So those definitely come into play. Certain players, if you have certain kinds of players who are really, whether it's because they're smaller, Daniels is potentially one of those players, or if they invite contact, any of that kind of stuff, like you're going to get more injuries because of that. But at the same time, like, you might do the exact same thing a million times, and just a couple times you hit that turf a little weird, or you make the wrong move, or there's another guy who happens to run into you at that exact moment, and that is absolutely, it's not luck in the sense of flipping coins, but it's certainly, stuff that you can't really control.
You mentioned the San Francisco 49ers, so if you look at your ranking of teams regarding most value lost due to injury in the 2025 regular season, number 1, the Arizona Cardinals, 266 total points missed. Number 2, the Washington Commanders, 230 total points missed. Number 3, the San Francisco 49ers at 200 total points missed. Number 4, the Buffalo Bills 190 total points missed. Arizona and Washington had bad regular seasons, but San Francisco and Buffalo had good regular seasons. How and why did the Niners and Bills do well?
Yeah, it's and just in general, the trend that we saw was basically that the teams who were the most injury hit this year were like a little bit below 500, and the teams that were the least hit were overwhelmingly very good teams. It was like the Seahawks, Broncos, Eagles. It was a lot of the Patriots were also the Rams, like a lot of teams that just had very good seasons were the teams that were healthy. And I think the 49ers are used to this at this point. They've had a lot of seasons like this. And so they've been, they were less deep this year than they've been in previous years. The benefit that they had this year was that they had a schedule that everybody sort of called out at the beginning of the year was going to be a pretty easy schedule, and that worked out for them. So they were able to have some success despite that. And if you're the Bills, it's like, as long as Josh Allen's healthy, you can work around that.
And of course, so much of how an NFL team does is quarterback. When it comes to the factors that most determine how an NFL team does in a season, is injury the number one factor? Is quarterback play the number one factor? Is overall passing offense the number one factor? Is turnover differential the number one factor? I'm asking you to generalize things, but in terms of the singular factor that most determines success or failure for an NFL team in a season right now, is injury the number one factor?
So that's a really interesting question. So I'm thinking out loud here. So roughly the way that we think about sort of the relationship between points and wins, if you're used to like wins over replacement in baseball type of thing, there's a relationship between sort of scoring and expected wins, and that's about 30 points per win. And the difference between the most injured team and the least injured team is maybe like 100 or 200 points. So that would be like 6-7 wins, something like that. And so that would be roughly the size of like an excellent quarterback. So I would say that a quarterback is probably, at the very high end, how good is your quarterback? Do you have the sort of like elite guys? But short of that, injuries is definitely up there. And actually it's worth, the sort of situational elements that you were kind of alluding to there for the Commanders is super relevant because they were amazing in late down situations last year. And in 2025, they did not have that kind of a performance. And that honestly, like in terms of the performance of the offense while Jayden Daniels was quarterback, like that accounts for basically all of the drop off in the offense. It's just like they were average in those situations as opposed to being unbelievable in 2024.
Much more with Alex Vigderman in moments, but if you are a Washington Commanders fan, check out bgobsession.com, an outstanding site for discussion about the team, especially off what it did in the 2026 NFL Draft. BG Obsession, or BGO, has been going strong since 2009. BG Obsession offers great contests, game day chats, and camaraderie. No politics, just football. Both old school and new school fans are welcome. Visit and join BGO at bgobsession.com. bgobsession.com, home to your burgundy and gold obsession. We're talking with Alex Vigderman, Vice President of Analytics for Sports Info Solutions. Generally speaking, are NFL teams now better than, worse than, or the same as they were years ago at preventing injuries?
We haven't done any research on this, in part because the company hasn't been around long enough to have like really good historical data on this. And just in general, it'd be harder to get, because the good news about how the NFL has progressed is that there's so much more transparency and information out there to kind of research some of this stuff. But I think as much as anything is the sort of way that the league has reacted to all of this. So we're getting better pads. You see a whole lot more players, certainly in 2025, I've seen with the concussion helmets and that sort of thing. So just like preventiveness at the league level, people might complain about how the receivers and quarterbacks are treated in terms of being able to get roughed up a little bit and that sort of thing. But definitely a lot of work by the league to limit some of that contact stuff. The kickoff rules are all in the interest of reducing injuries. So I think that those are as big of impacts as anything. And the teams are spending a whole ton of money because they can. There's not a salary cap on their spending on this kind of stuff, so it is a resource that they can use. But to me, the league sort of legislation stuff is the bigger impact.
Washington in the 2025 regular season wasn't just bad. The Commanders also were old. Washington had the highest average snap-weighted age in the NFL in terms of offensive and defensive snaps, 28.68. This has been a big part of general manager Adam Peters making it a point this offseason to get the team younger. That said, being old does not mean being bad. I mean, you look at the Los Angeles Rams. They made the NFC Championship game this past season. They, for the 2025 regular season, were number 23 out of 32 NFL teams in lowest average snap-weighted age in terms of offensive and defensive snaps, 27.44. The Denver Broncos, who made the AFC Championship game this past season, they, for the 2025 regular season, were number 28 out of 32 NFL teams in lowest average snap-weighted age in terms of offensive and defensive snaps, 27.78. How significant, how big of a deal is age for an NFL team?
So this is, I think, related to the question of how we're sort of weighting things in the total points sense, because like if you have a bunch of snaps being played by relatively less significant players who are older, then it's not as much of a problem. And certainly, one of the reasons why you don't want players to be old is because they are potentially injury prone, right? And what we've actually found is in terms of modeling injury risk is that age is not on its own as much of an injury risk factor, in part because playing time gets modulated with age. So you don't often see guys playing a ton of snaps at the really sort of injury prone ages. It's more about just like not playing as many guys who are 22. And so I'm not as concerned about being older and bad. I'm certainly not as concerned for the Commanders because it's like, the biggest story is that you didn't have your quarterback for most of the year, and we would be having a much different conversation about just the quality of the team's performance if he had been there for 17 games.
It stands out that Washington last regular season was an old team with an average snap-weighted age in terms of offensive and defensive snaps of 28.68, not even 29, and yet that was old. The godfather of sabermetrics in baseball, Bill James, he years ago uncovered that an MLB player's prime isn't what people thought, say between the ages of 28 and 32. He found that an MLB player's prime is more, say, between the ages of 24 and 28. Similar research has found a similar conclusion with NBA players. The NFL is trickier because there's wide variance with how different positions age, right? Quarterbacks and offensive linemen age a lot better than running backs and cornerbacks do. But generally speaking, whatever you think of as young, think younger, because that is where things are at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sir, first of all, thanks for mentioning Bill. He was one of the co-founders of our company, so we hold him in high regard. But yeah, we found for aging curves for NFL players is basically like you enter the NFL and you start declining. And so, you might start declining by 24, you might start declining earlier. And so, and that's something that as a person who plays, fantasy sports, if you're in this sort of dynasty fantasy football world, like that's the world you live in. It's like, okay, I want the rookies, I want the youngest guys, because everybody else, if you're lucky to make it to a second contract. And so when you're saying, a team that's averaging 28 doesn't sound old, all those guys are second contract guys, and that's a relatively rare thing among football players. So yeah, the age thing is definitely a concern, in part just because there's a lot of turnover in the league, but the injury part of it is a big piece where generally you would want to have guys who are in that sort of 22 to 24 range.
Final question, Jayden Daniels, spectacular rookie season, injury ruined second season. What's your take on where we're at with him?
Yeah, so I mentioned before the sort of drop-off in performance. By expected points added, he had a huge drop-off. He was plus 67 in 2024, and he was basically zero in 2025. And almost all of that difference is on just third and fourth down plays. Like, he was basically even with his performance in 2024 on early downs, but the late down stuff was a big difference. And that is something that generally is not sustainable over time, like, or sort of predictable over time. Sometimes you'll have good years, sometimes you'll have bad years, and you'll sort of fluctuate. And so I would expect him to be somewhere in the middle in the future on that stuff. So that'll sort of even itself out. And then, to me, the big question is, heading into the NFL, one of the concerns about him as a top prospect was that he had injury risk. He was a little smaller. And as soon as if you have that concern coming out, what often happens is that you enter the NFL, and if you have a healthy season, people forget. It's you totally, any of that risk, but that risk was a career level risk. So every season that you have healthy doesn't necessarily remove that career level risk beyond a point. And so he gets hurt in the second year and has a really tough time. Now that's really a question for him going forward. And to me, that's the biggest concern, because I do think if he's healthy, you can still put him on the same sort of caliber as the other guys in his draft class. And, we saw Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Drake May, all, in the divisional round of the playoffs. And so that's a pretty big group to be compared to. But I think he's right in there with those guys. I think that after the rookie year, you might have been able to say, like, he's definitely the guy you want. I don't think you can say that now, but that's as much about the injury part of it flaring up as it is about the quality of the performance.
Alex Vigderman, Vice President of Analytics for Sports Info Solutions. Alex, thank you. All the best.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right. While we're talking Washington Commanders, they did come up on ESPN's NFL Live on Wednesday afternoon. Some good discussion between host Laura Rutledge and ESPN NFL analyst and former Redskins executive Louis Riddick on the man who Washington took with the number 7 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, linebacker Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. Here you go.
Defensive players flew off the board early in this year's draft, and now the conversation becomes, how can these rookies make an instant impact on their new team? So let's start in Washington, where the Commanders took Sonny Styles at 7. Styles, an upgrade for a Washington defense that finished 30th or worse in efficiency, yards per play, and takeaways last season. Commanders could muster only 10 takeaways, their fewest in a season all time. Only the Jets had fewer in 2025. That was 0 for the Jets. They're catching a stray in this. As Commanders GM Adam Peters tells us, Styles is just what they need.
He's an incredible sideline-to-sideline defender, a guy who's for today's NFL. He makes the field smaller. He can blitz, he can cover, he can tackle. He does everything really well. So for us, it was a pretty easy decision when he's still on the board. The pick didn't have to think too hard when he's still there.
Okay, so it's interesting because as you hear Adam Peters talking about the versatility of Sonny Styles, it makes you think about all the different things he can do. Louis, what's the key to getting the most out of his skill set, though?
Laura, I think for him, it's about, one, letting him go ahead and settle in at the Mike backer position initially, but then really using his skill set, from a week-to-week, game-to-game type of, in a week-to-week, game-to-game type of situation that gives you the best chance to win. And by that, I mean this. Look, obviously, he only played linebacker 2 years in college. He was a safety before that. But he's a guy who could really be someone who really is, a key factor stopping the inside run, stopping the outside run. If you need him to kind of move outside the box, he can cover tight ends. He can cover running backs. If you need him to blitz, he'd be a great interior blitzer. He'd be a great edge blitzer. Quite honestly, I think he'd be a great rover as a safety as well, which is a position he played already. There's a reason why I think this guy reminds me of Brian Urlacher in his transition from safety to linebacker. I think his is going to look very similar.
Yeah. I mean, not only that, he just looks like he should be an all-pro. Like, you look at him walking across the stage, look at him in general, he looks the part.
So I assume nothing with Washington's defense, given how bad the defense has been in each of the last 3 seasons, 2023 through 2025. But it is hard not to have optimism that the defense, off all of the changes this offseason, will be better this coming season. Like, I do think that the defense will be better. And I don't want to get too cocky with that because, again, the defense has been quite bad in each of the last 3 seasons. But there is legitimate reason to have optimism with the defense. And, of course, Sonny Styles is a big part of that optimism. All right, whatever big event that you're planning, a wedding, a party, whatever, consider using introducing a great sponsor of this podcast, cateringbyuptown.com. Visit cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. Catering by Uptown is outstanding. It is a family business. It is run by the Pereiras, who are great Washington Commanders fans. Catering by Uptown is committed to meeting your every need with elegance and precision. Catering by Uptown takes care of every detail so that you can enjoy your event. And Catering by Uptown's specialty is weddings. Get excellent service at an affordable price. In fact, if you visit cateringbyuptown.com and click on venues, you could check out Catering by Uptown's premier wedding venues. Visit cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. That's cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. Well, for a second consecutive Wednesday, the Washington Nationals enjoyed a blowout win. Wednesday night, April 29th, a 14-2 win at the New York Mets. And this most recent Wednesday evening, May 6th, a 15-2 win over the Minnesota Twins at Nationals Park in Game 2 of a 3-game series. This was a game in which the Nats scored 7 runs in the bottom of the 8th. And this game was off the Nats' 11-3 loss to the Twins at Nationals Park on Tuesday evening. So each game in this series has been a blowout. The Nats in MLB's 2026 regular season now are 17-20, 5-13 at home versus 12-7 on the road. And the Nats offense, which lately had cooled off, was outstanding on Wednesday evening. 15 runs, 14 hits, which were 4 home runs, a triple, 5 doubles and 4 singles, 5 walks, 7 for 15 with runners in scoring position. This game was batting practice for the Nats. 10 of the 14 hits were extra base hits. So the Nats eventually got to Twin starting pitcher Bailey Ober, who allowed 5 runs in 5 innings. So many Nats players did well. C.J. Abrams, he is the Nats starting shortstop and number 4 batter, went 3 for 5 with a grand slam, an RBI double, and another double. 8 total bases for Abrams in this game. Abrams in the Nats 1-run fourth had a 1-out RBI double to right center field on a 1-2 pitch to tie the game at 1. Abrams in the Nats 7-run eighth had a 1-out grand slam to right center field for a 14-2 Nats lead. The grand slam came off Twins reliever and former Nats reliever Luis Garcia. But man, C.J. Abrams is doing so well. He, for this regular season, now has an OPS of 960. Brady House, he is the Nats starting third baseman and number 5 batter, went 2 for 5 with a 2-run homer and an RBI double. House in the Nats 3-run sixth had an RBI double to left field for a 4-2 Nats lead. House in the Nats 2-run seventh had a 2-out 2-run homer to center field for an 8-2 Nats lead. The homer went a projected 425 feet per StatCast. Really good to see Brady House have a game like this. He needed this. He had struggled big time since his hot start to the regular season, for which House now has an OPS of 691. But, lately House has not even been playing regularly. He has not been necessarily an everyday player for the Nats, but he in this game played and did quite well. Jose Tena, he is the Nats starting DH and number 6 batter, went 2 for 5 with a solo homer and an RBI double. Tena in the Nats 3-run sixth had a first pitch opposite field RBI double to the left center field gap for a 5-2 Nats lead. Tena in the Nats 7-run eighth had a 2-out full count solo homer to right center field for a 15-2 Nats lead. Jose Tena for this regular season, 69 plate appearances, OPS of 832. He has been very productive when he has played. Drew Millis got in on the act in this game. He is the Nats starting catcher and number 8 batter, went 2 for 4 with a 2-run homer and a double. Drew Millis had 2 extra base hits. He had been reeling, but he in the Nats 2-run fifth had a first pitch 2-run homer to right center field for a 3-2 Nats lead. That homer actually ended a 4-game homerless drought for the Nats. Millis for this regular season now has an OPS of 514. So the home runs were by C.J. Abrams, Brady House, Jose Tena, and Drew Millis, but there was more offensive production. James Wood, he is the Nats starting right fielder and number 1 batter, went 2 for 4 with a 2-run single, another single, and a walk, and he went 2 for 2 on stolen bases. Wood in the Nats 7-run eighth had a 1-out 2-run single through the right side of the infield for a 10-2 Nats lead. He, for this regular season, now has an OPS of 893, and the triple was by Nasi Nunez. He is the Nats starting second baseman and number 9 batter, went 1 for 4 with an RBI RBI triple. Nunez in the Nats' 3-run sixth had a 2-out RBI triple to right field on a 1-2 pitch for a 6-2 Nats lead. Just his second extra base hit in this regular season, for which he has an OPS of 565. But what an offensive showing by the Nats in this game. The Nats over their 37 games have scored 198 runs, 5.35 runs per game. Even with the recent dip, the Nats still are averaging well above 5 runs per game. Not bad for a team in season number 1 of a restarted rebuild. Here was Nats manager Blake Butera during his postgame press conference on Wednesday night on the Nats offense, and then you'll hear multiple follow-up exchanges.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ober did a really good job of sequencing against us. I think against the lefties to start off, we knew he'd go a lot with the off speed, but he went heaters in, and then to set himself up for off speed the rest of the at-bats against our lefties. And I think just that first time through, just didn't expect that, and then made our adjustment second time through and did much better. But I mean, he's a good pitcher. He mixes speeds. It's a tough angle. But yeah, I was happy that we kept at it.
Before the game, you talked specifically about those adjustments. What did you see and hear in the dugout?
Yeah, constant communication and conversation about how each guy was being pitched. I thought our hitting coaches did a tremendous job of recognizing that first time through, and then our players just talking with one another about what they were seeing, how they were getting attacked. It was very similar, so it was really helpful for the rest of the guys to hear.
I'm sure Mills has been frustrated the way things have gone offensively. For him, what can a night like tonight just do for his confidence?
I think it's huge. I mean, we know he's athletic. We know he can swing the bat better than he's shown, and he knows that too. And I think that's the biggest frustration for him. To see him have a night like he had tonight with the home run and the double, 2 huge at-bats. Hopefully he can, carry this momentum forward and gain some confidence and understand he is a good hitter.
The majority of your runs were driven in by extra base hits. What were you seeing either from the power of the at-bats, the speed on the base paths?
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job of staying through the middle of the field. A bunch of doubles and extra base hits to left center and right center. And then, on the bases as well. Woody with 2 stolen bases. Dalen had a stolen base. I thought we did a good job once we did get on, picking the right spots to go and trying to make something happen.
Daniel's been on a nice little stretch here over the past 5-6 games. Is there anything that you've noticed about him over the past week or so?
No, I feel like that was Taney you said. I feel like he's been really good all the way around since the season started. I know he's been in the lineup, here and there. He's been pinch hitting a bunch. He's done a tremendous job of pinch hitting. I think he's just a total pro and a great teammate. Whenever his name's called, he's been ready to go, whether that's when he's in the starting lineup as a DH, whether it's when he's called in to pinch hit late in the game against a tough reliever, whether it's to go in the game in left field or second base. He's ready for whatever opportunity comes about, and he makes the most of it.
Well, as good as the Nats offense was in this 15-2 win over the Twins at Nationals Park on Wednesday evening, do not lose sight of how well the Nats starting pitcher in this game did, Miles Mikolas. He, of course, had not been doing well. He lately had looked better, and he on Wednesday evening was legitimately good. He allowed 2 runs in 5 1/3 innings. He gave up 3 hits, which were a home run, a double, and a single. He had 3 strikeouts versus no walks. He issued a wild pitch, but he threw a lot of strikes, 74 pitches, 52 strikes, just 22 balls. So Mikolas in the top of the third allowed a run on a leadoff check swing, opposite field double by Luke Keeschel to no man's land in right field, and a full count RBI single by Matt Wallner into right center field for a 1-0 Twins lead, despite Wallner having been down in the count at 1.02. Mikolas in the top of the fifth allowed a run as he gave up a 2-out opposite field solo homer by Matt Wallner to left center field on an 0-2 pitch for a 2-1 Twins lead. The homer went a projected 420 feet per Statcast. But Mikolas overall did well. Nice job, Miles Mikolas, and the Nats relief pitching in this 15-2 win over the Twins at Nationals Park on Wednesday evening was good. 2 Nats relievers combined for 3 2/3 scoreless, hitless, and walkless innings. Mitchell Parker tossed 2 2/3 perfect innings with 2 swinging strikeouts. Parker now in this regular season at the major league level, 7 games, all in relief, ERA of 3.38, whip of 0.94. He's looked good. good. And Zach Kent tossed a scoreless, hitless, and walkless top of the ninth despite committing a went-out throwing error. The Nats on Sunday afternoon announced having claimed Kent off waivers from the Minnesota Twins and having optioned him to AAA Rochester, and the Nats on Wednesday afternoon announced having recalled Kent from AAA Rochester. Game 3 for the Nats against the Twins at Nationals Park Thursday afternoon at 1:05. The Nats have listed Jake Irvin as their probable starting pitcher for the game. We've all been there. You're away for the weekend, the big game is on, and you realize you're restricted from watching. Or maybe you're trying to check the latest lines on your betting app, but your local network is blocking the site. These are the ultimate unforced errors. You can prevent this from happening to you with IPVanish. IPVanish is the powerhouse VPN designed to keep you in the game no matter where you are. IPVanish helps you stay connected to your favorite team and streaming services while you travel, but it's not just about watching the game. For the bettors out there, IPVanish provides an extra layer of security and privacy that helps you access your account safely on public Wi-Fi. Plus, IPVanish is lightning fast, so you won't have to worry about lag during those crucial live betting moments. Right now, get a massive discount at IPVanish.com. That's IPVanish.com to get started today. Secure your play and go to IPVanish.com. So are the Baltimore Orioles in the midst of a get-right series? They off a 5-game losing streak now have won each of the first 2 games of a 3-game series at the Miami Marlins, a 9-7 win at the Marlins on Tuesday evening, and now a 7-4 win at the Marlins on Wednesday evening. The O's in MLB's 2026 regular season now are 17-20. The O's on Wednesday evening, very good offensively, 7 runs, 7 hits, which were a home run, a triple, 4 doubles, and a single, 7 walks, 3 for 11 with runners in scoring position. You know, it's disappointing as the O's have been so far. They are in the upper half of MLB in runs, 171 runs over 37 games, 4.62 runs per game. That's not bad. The biggest problem for the team, as we have been discussing on the podcast, has been the starting pitching, but the offense, for the most part, has been pretty good, and Pete Alonso lately has been especially good. He is on fire. He is the Orioles starting first baseman and number 4 batter, went 1 for 5 with a 3-run homer. Alonso in the Orioles 3-run first had a went-out 3-run homer to left center field on an 0-2 pitch for a 3-0 Orioles lead. The homer went a projected 407 feet per StatCast. Alonso for this regular season now has an OPS of 780, up from 637 as of games through April 26. He all of a sudden has gone from being bad to being good. Also continuing to do well is Adley Rutschman. He is the Orioles starting catcher and number 3 batter, went 2 for 3 with 2 RBI doubles, a walk, and a hit by pitch. Rutschman in the Orioles 1-run 5th had a 2-out full count RBI double to right field for a 5-3 Orioles lead. Rutschman in the Orioles 1-run 7th had a 1-out RBI double to left field for a 6-3 Orioles lead. Adley Rutschman for this regular season now has an OPS of 931. How about your Adley Rutschman slash line? Superb batting average of 313, on base percentage of 368, slugging percentage of 563. We, during O's manager Craig Albernaz's post-game session with reporters on Wednesday night, had these exchanges.
Adley, another hot night at the plate. When he's doing it from both sides of the plate and he's hitting third in your lineup, what does that unlock for some of the other guys there?
Yeah, it sets the table, it sets the tone, especially with those 4 at the top, and it has the ability for us to kind of lengthen the lineup a little bit with Sammy hitting 5 and get Leote 6 and Beef 7. Like, it just lengthens the lineup for us. And the thing with Adley, like, his at-bat quality is so good. Like, he's seeing pitches, he's laying off tough pitches, and then he's getting off his A swing, and he's moving so well in the box right now, and he's able to catch up to velo and make adjustments to the off speed.
How encouraged have you been by the lineup's ability to tack on runs throughout the game each of the last 2 nights after maybe a lot of games where they'd either score early or score late?
Yeah, hitting's hard. Big league pitching is extremely tough every single night, and our guys have the ability to not give in, and some nights you string hits together, some nights you don't, and our guys lately have been a good job of managing the at-bat, getting timely hits and not trying to do too much. And to me, it's, I think you have 5 walks tonight. Yeah, 5 walks. The ability just to take out walks and pass over to the next guy and to put pressure on the defense, on the pitcher is kind of what you're seeing right now.
Alonso hit that homer with an 0-2 count. Is that kind of it's a very different at-bat than somebody who has a 12-pitch at-bat, but to be able to hit that ball over the fence on a 0-2 count, what does that kind of tell you about the kind of at-bats that Pete Alonso's taking?
Yeah, Pete always has a chance to hit a home run no matter what the count is, and that's what it tells me. Like, he's extremely prepared. He has a great plan every single time to go up to the plate. Sometimes it doesn't look great because that's his approach he's sticking with, and that's something where I love guys being stubborn to their approach and the game plan, go up to your bat, and that's what Pete did. And you get the fastball, and he didn't miss it, and it was a great swing on it. And his at bats, man, for a while now have been outstanding. So we're going to keep that rolling.
All right. Now, I do want to mention Gunnar Henderson, who has really fallen off. He is the Orioles starting shortstop and number one batter, went 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. Henderson for this regular season now has an OPS of just 691. Remember when he was doing so well? His OPS now down to 691, down from 779 as of games through April 28th. So he's struggling right now. But still, the offense over the first 2 games of this series has been good. Again, 9-7 win at the Marlins on Tuesday evening. 7-4 win at the Marlins on Wednesday evening, 16 runs over the first 2 games of this series. The Orioles starting pitcher on Wednesday evening was Brandon Young. He in this start got off to a terrible start, but then was good. Young in the bottom of the first allowed 3 runs on a double, 2 singles, and 2 walks. All of this came with 2 outs. But he ended his outing by throwing 5 1/3 scoreless innings. And so ultimately, he allowed 3 runs in 6 innings. He gave up 4 hits, which were a double and 3 singles. He issued 3 walks, but he recorded 5 strikeouts, and he threw a lot of strikes, 93 pitches, 62 strikes, just 31 balls. A very nice job by Brandon Young of settling down and giving the O's 6 innings. So here was Craig Albernaz during his post-game session with reporters on Wednesday night on Brandon Young.
Oh, responded outstanding. He gave up 3 runs in the first. Not ideal, but he did a great job of settling back into the game, and he didn't let off the gas. Fastball was in the strike zone. Great job mixing the split, getting the curveball going too early to kind of change speeds, a little push-pull. He did an outstanding job, and to give us 6 innings was huge.
Yes, it was, and here was some of Brandon Young's post-game session with reporters on Wednesday night.
3 earned runs in the first inning. How were you able to settle down after that?
Didn't really have a choice. Just had to buckle down, make my pitches, just mentally stay calm and focus and know that I have a job to do, and it's to, give the team a chance to win.
How'd the fastball feel out of your hand throughout the game, and what can you just say about your location throughout the outing?
It felt good. Early on, we didn't really have a plan to just attack them so much, and then kind of learned they're kind of taking the stuff at the bottom, taking the 4 seams down and the splitters down. They're spitting on them. So I think the goal after that was just to rip the 4 seam, and it worked out tonight.
Well, you look at Brandon Young, this is his age 27 season. The O's got him via signing him to a minor league contract in June 2020. He is not some supremely well-regarded young pitching prospect, but he is an option for the O's in terms of younger starting pitching. And, the O's have not done a good job of developing starting pitching. You'd love to see a guy like Brandon Young actually pan out, but he's so far, when you look at what he has done in Major League regular season starts, overall has not done well, but some good stuff from him on Wednesday evening. And the Orioles relief pitching in this 7-4 win at the Marlins on Wednesday evening. Good. 3 Orioles relievers combined to allow 1 run in 3 innings. Grant Wolfram did allow a run in 2/3 of an inning, but Anthony Nunez was really good. 1 1/3 perfect innings. And Rico Garcia, a scoreless and hitless bottom of the 9th for the save as he continues to be terrific. Garcia now in this regular season, 18 games, 17 innings, ERA of 0.53, whip of 0.41, strikeouts per 9 innings of 10.06. Game 3 for the O's at the Marlins, Thursday evening at 6:40. Cade Povich will be the Orioles starting pitcher. And that'll do it for you and me for now, but there's more to come. Friday's show, episode 1321, we'll have much more on the Washington Commanders. Also on Friday's show, I'll talk Washington Nationals and Baltimore Orioles. The Nats are home to the Minnesota Twins Thursday afternoon at 1:05 for Game 3 of a 3-game series. The O's are at the Miami Marlins Thursday evening at 6:40 for Game 3 of a 3-game series. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and I'll talk to you on Friday.
Let's get it then, Heineke. Heineke.